Hello everyone, so we're going to be covering Exodus 21, verses 22, 23, 24, and 25. Regarding this text, the topic of this text is whether the woman in the scenario is being spoken about, or if it is her unborn child and born child in this scenario. And looking at the text, which we will go over, it is clearly talking about the unborn child, or the child in general. If men strife and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall surely be punished according to the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. So let's look at the words and what they mean in Hebrew. So right here, right here for hurt, we have H5062. It's nagaf, which means to stub, inflict, beat, dash, hurt, smite, down. So, and then we see, so all this and all this. So it means to hurt. Okay, so that's for the word for hurt. And then we go to mischief right here. And then also right here. So that would be ason, which means to hurt as well. Mischief. And then also here, the H611 is the same meaning. So, with that in mind, how would no mischief be possible? Let me take away those numbers so it's easier to read. So, focusing on 22. If men strife and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow. Now, how can no mischief follow after the woman was already hurt? Because mischief again means hurt. So if men are fighting and hurt a woman with child, but yet no one was hurt, she wasn't hurt, but yet no hurt followed, that doesn't make any sense because the woman was already hurt to begin with. In this scenario, that's how the scenario starts. The men are fighting and hurt a woman, and that causes the child to depart from her, whether it's a miscarriage or injured. I mean, you can look it up on Google or any search engine you have and see if when a woman is hurt in her stomach, has trauma to her stomach when she is pregnant, oftentimes she might give an early birth. That doesn't necessarily mean the child in her womb will be stillborn or miscarried due to the impact, but the impact alone can cause an early birth to happen. And also, if there is trauma to the baby inside the mother, when that baby is born, that baby can have birth defects due to the injury. So we already know that the woman was hurt, and that was what caused the child to depart from her in this scenario. So it would be impossible for no hurt to follow after the mother, was already hurt to begin with. So the mischief that follows or doesn't follow is pertaining to the child. Because the child may be born prematurely but have nothing, no birth defects, and be born healthy despite departing from the mother early. So if the baby is fine, if no mischief follows, he, the one who hurt the mother to begin with, shall surely be punished according to the woman's husband, and will pay as the judges determine. But the rest of the 23, 24, 25. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Looking at it, if it is regarding the woman that 23 through 25 is talking about, then we already know that it would be impossible for it to just be pay as the judges determine, because no mischief followed. When mischief means hurt, and the woman was hurt to begin with. So, looking at this, it is clear that this passage and scenario is talking about if the child is harmed or not harmed after a man hits a woman, causing her child to depart from her. Premature birth or stillbirth or miscarry in general. So this is just a little add-on to, is the point of these verses anyways? Why is God giving us these passages and these different scenarios? These multitude of scenarios that obviously doesn't cover all scenarios, but God is giving us these discussions to show us the justice and consequences. That's what these passages are. God is giving us these rules that He wants us to have an understanding of His laws, how to treat each other, and that our lives and our bodies are important, and that we should have value for each other and the unborn, and that we should form our laws, even the ones that God hasn't directly given us, and that we should focus our laws and new laws that we come up with around these basic principles that God has commanded us and given us in these books and texts. So regarding the scenario in verse 22, we already see that there's a scenario of what happens when a man kills a man. That the one who took the life shall also be put to death. Verses 12, 13, 14, and 15. He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely put to death. If a man lie in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. 14. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die. 15. He that smiteth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. So it's not just a man as in a male killing another male. It's also a man killing a mother, so that's a woman. And again, these are the basis and the foundation, the rules that God is giving us as a foundation, that we can know what He's conveying to us. So it's not just a man that smiteth a man, it's anyone that kills a man. Same as with the commandments, thou shalt not kill. So there's more context to this. So there's this scenario already. What happens when a man or a woman dies by another man or woman? They shall be put to death. So verses 22 is not talking about if the woman dies or about the woman. That scenario has already been given earlier in the chapter here. This section right here is focusing on the unborn and then the born after it departs from her. And then if the child is hurt or not hurt or ends up dying, the life for life, the eye for eye, hand for hand, foot for foot, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Also, there's multiple verses in Scripture talking about the unborn, and they have value, like John the Baptist in Luke 1. In Luke 1, 24, and after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and hid herself 5 months. So she conceived. But then I'm sure everyone's familiar with what happens once Elizabeth and Mary meet. Verse 41, and it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb. So here we see that brephos, infant, literally or figuratively, babe, young, child, infant. Here we see that there is value in it. They are considered humans and worth and childs already. Children. Same as back in Exodus, the fruit. With child, so that her fruit fall away. Pregnant, conceive, child. That was for child right here. Oop, right here. And now let's look at the fruit. Offspring, a lad. Fruit, son, young man, one. So we see that here as well. And then we go to Psalms 139, 13, and 14. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee in thy belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So there's already value before being formed in the womb. But not only that, I sanctified you and ordained you before you came out of the womb. I mean, right there, it knocks out that the unborn don't have value, when in fact they do have value. Otherwise, all these verses, all these passages would be pointless and incorrect. So throughout Scripture, we see that humans, we have value before we are born and before we are formed. But referring to Exodus 21, we see that there are different scenarios given and what is to be done using the judgment God has given us based on these passages. So here's talking about humans killing humans and what shall happen. And then it talks about the unborn. A child in the womb that gets departed from the mother because of if she were to get hit or any other impact. But if anyone disagrees still, my only question to you is, if this is talking about the woman, then how can no mischief follow if the woman was hurt to begin with? How can there be the consequence of only paying a fine because no mischief follows? Because if we look at verse 25, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And stripe for stripe is what happened to the woman. She was hurt. She was hurt to begin with. That is the opening line of this scenario. So, how could she be hurt, but then not have mischief follow? So if it's just talking about the woman, how is that an option when she was clearly hurt to begin with? And she would have had a wound for wound or stripe for stripe or any other of these things happen in these sections. Being hurt is mischief to begin with. So no mischief would be impossible. So again, my question to you is, how is no mischief follow, and then that punishment of having to pay determined by the judges, how is that even an option to begin with? And I think it's quite clear, based on the context of the whole chapter, that this specific scenario is talking about the unborn child to begin with.